Grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. Good evening, brothers and sisters. I am very happy to stand before you all tonight. And I just want to thank God, first of all, that I have the chance to come up here and to preach His word, that He gives me more opportunities to come up here and share His word. As you know, we are going through the book of Daniel in our Bible study. And it's a very fascinating book with many different characteristics shown in it, and there are some bad characteristics, but there are also some very good characteristics, just like faith, loyalty, truth, humbleness, and leadership. With that, I'd like to open to Daniel chapter 3, verse 28. Daniel chapter 3, verse 28. Nebuchadnezzar exclaimed, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel and rescued his servants who trusted in him. They violated the king's command and risked their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God." When we look at this verse, we got to look at the context of what is going on to understand really what is happening. But to shorten it, I would like to summarize what happens is, if you look back, Nebuchadnezzar, he felt such pride in his heart to the point where he wanted to be worshipped. So he made a golden idol, and he wanted all the nation, everyone to come. There was prefects, advisors, his assistants. There was rulers of provinces and governors that came to this event, and they all were to worship and bow down to this idol that he made. Nebuchadnezzar, he said that at the sound of the trumpet, the lyre, any instruments, they are to bow down. And as we know, there are three faithful men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that did not bow when it happened. Nebuchadnezzar, when he saw this, he was enraged and he was mad because he set out this command. He is the king and everything is supposed to go under his word. And when he got mad, it wasn't just, I'm going to do something. He really wanted to go to a point where he would kill them. So he commanded his best soldiers to come and tie them up and throw them into the furnace because they denied the fact that they were going to bow down to him and they would not serve his idols or gods, but they would serve their own true God. But what happened when he threw the three men in the furnace? When he threw them in the furnace, a couple of seconds later, he asks, "Did I not throw three men into the furnace, but I see four? And the fourth looks as if he is the Son of Man." And then he called them out of the furnace because he saw them walking around and he was wondering what was going on. It's just amazing how he told them to heat it 7 times as hot, and the two soldiers who threw those three men, they died themselves, but these 3 men were walking around. There was a fourth with them. He called them out. They came out of the furnace without any burns. Their clothes, they were perfectly fine. There was no even scent or smell of smoke or fire on them. If you look at these verses, it's just one of those things that shows how powerful and amazing our God is. If any of you go camping, and I know that a lot of us go, and even if you go to a bonfire, if you even sit around a fire for even like a minute or two, srazu, you're gonna have to come home later and you're gonna have to take a shower because you smell like smoke and fire. But these 3 men, they were sent into a furnace that was burning 7 times as hot. There was no smell of fire. Not a single hair of their head or their body was singed, and everything was perfectly fine with them. Nebuchadnezzar was very shocked, and I believe we all would be. And he was amazed at the same time by what he saw. I know that we all would stand in awe of what just happened because we wouldn't really know how to explain it. After he saw this, in awe, he just said, "Praise," and he exclaimed, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." He cannot stop himself from saying it even in front of all the people he invited. He had his reputation on the line when he said it because he had so many important people there. Even though he was the king, in their eyes, he had to look as if he had the rule straight, where everyone was under him and his rule is the final word. But Nebuchadnezzar, he was impressed by the faithfulness of these three men to the point where they would defy his law. And they showed so much faith to their God. They showed so much determination in their words and in their actions. In some translation, it says that they changed the words of the king or violated the words of the king, like in mine. But the most correct words, I've studied around, I looked around, and the most correct words is that they despised the words of the king to the point where they thought that it was not tolerable to even listen or to hear or to do what he said. The one thing they did was they stayed faithful and loyal to their own God more than to the king. If the king were to make some law against their own God, they would not listen. They would listen to their own God's law, their own God's command, rather than the king's. Nebuchadnezzar saw this as something very bad and he hated the men for it. Before what happened in the furnace, he saw that, and like it said, he was enraged. After the men came out of the furnace, he saw and realized how powerful their God was, and he even said it. He admired their faithfulness. God's power changed Nebuchadnezzar's view of these men. He changed his mind. That is very hard for someone who's stuck up as a king, who has everything his own way and says his words are final and they are the law. Nebuchadnezzar could not remain silent despite his irritation and anger from them disobeying. He can't restrain his admiration for these three men and for their God. He could have just kept silent and still hated them and done more things and tried to kill them more, but he couldn't just keep it in. He saw God's power, and for some people, they would just be speechless. But for the king to see it, he had some words to say, and it was to give praise to their God, for he knew how powerful he was. In verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar, he professes the power of the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The word professes, some people can use in a wrong way, but in the context of this story and how he professes the power of God, it means that he affirms his belief in him and his power and what he does. Okay, if we can read verse 29 of Daniel chapter 3. Therefore, I issue a decree that anyone of any people, nation, or language who says anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be torn limb from limb, and his house made a garbage dump, for there is no other God who is able to deliver like this. As we have read, Nebuchadnezzar, he makes a decree to all people that no one is to say anything against their God. And he mentions how no other God can deliver like theirs, and decree is not just one thing where he says it, it's fine, whatever, and it just goes around to some people. But when it's a decree, it goes out to all the nation. Everyone is to go under their law. And he saw the power of their God, and he would not dare do anything against him, and that's why he issued that decree. So it wouldn't affect him anymore because he saw how powerful he was. We all can see how drastic of a change God can make in people's minds and ultimately their lives using his power. He is omnipotent, which means he is all-powerful, and you can look at this throughout the Bible, and it shows how powerful he is. He has all power. He delivers those who are faithful to him and love him, and he shows himself to people for them to realize something and take it for themselves. If you look at this whole entire story and just think of Nebuchadnezzar's situation, what he's put into. He is the king, and he has this pride in his heart, and he wants to be worshiped. When the three men don't bow, he has this extreme anger and hate for them. It's almost like when you tell a child to do something and they look straight in your face and just say no. You expect them to do what you ask because you have this authority over them. You are older than them, and you expect them to listen to you. But for the king situation, it's 100 times more serious because he is the king and his words are final. His reputation is there. And he saw how these 3 men disobeyed, and a bunch of people were there to watch how he got defied, how they didn't listen. And so he got angry after that. And after they came out of the furnace, not hurt, I don't think Nebuchadnezzar was just sitting around and just yelled or said it loudly or just sat there and said, praise be to their God. I feel like his pride was crushed in that moment when he exclaimed that there should be praise to him. He must have felt some sort of hurt, shame, almost like he was belittled, but ultimately humbled. Sometimes God shows things to people so that they change, so they come to him in humility. Sometimes God shows himself in our lives, up close in person, or through people, or through dreams or visions, to break us down so that we realize how powerful he is. His power isn't truly shown just through the fact that he breaks us down, but it's shown from the point of how he builds us stronger than we ever imagined from the rubble that we were before. That's when you see God's power working in your life. If you show how prideful you are, he will show you how he humbles. I believe that every message should point to the cross, and the whole entire Bible points to the cross. And even on this pulpit, it says, we preach Christ crucified. Think about yourself right now. Look at the cross and what God did for you, how he showed his power in your life. You deserve death, but instead he gives you mercy, grace, for you to have a chance to obtain salvation through him, through what he did for you. Nebuchadnezzar once professed the power of God. Have we all professed his power in our lives? I want you all to make this profession in your heart. My God is faithful. My God is loving. My God is all-knowing. My God is all-powerful. My God delivers. My God came down to earth as a man to die on the cross for me and my sins. My God rose from death. My God is mighty to save. And with that, I would like to finish in prayer.